So welcome again to the Parent Information Night. We're going to be covering a few different topics tonight. We're going to be looking at some updates on how Chromebooks are utilized in our district. We're going to look at CAASPP testing, the state testing that is coming up soon, and AI in Oak Grove School District, so that you're aware of what's going on, what direction the district has been taking. And I will advance to the next slide. There we go. And my name is Steve Harmon. I'm one of the EdTech specialists. I specifically kind of cover the Burnell learning community, but we all kind of interchange with the different schools. So Burnell Learning Community is Burnell Intermediate School and all of its feeder schools, so the schools that feed into Burnell. And I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Patricia Mondragon Doty. I'm Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. Thank you very much for being here.
Good evening. Thanks for showing up, everyone, on a busy evening, I'm sure. My name is Bruce Neff. I'm an EdTech specialist as well, and I primarily serve the Davis learning community and all the schools that feed into that. I've been in the district for about 23 years now. I started off Santa Teresa Elementary, teaching 4th grade there for 9 years, and I've been had the honor of doing this job for the past 14.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Sergio Rizzi. I'm also an EdTech specialist for the Oak Grove School District. I support the Herman learning community, so that's Herman Intermediate School and all of the elementary schools that feed into Herman. And like Bruce and Steve, I've also been a classroom teacher in our district. And this will be probably my 20th year in the district this year. So just like Steve had mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, our task for tonight will be talking a little bit about our Chromebook, student Chromebooks, and some tips and strategies for the CAASPP state testing that's coming up. We'll also be updating you guys on any of the status for AI in education, specifically on our district this year.
Okay, we'll begin. Our first topic this evening is discussing Chromebook care. So we've, as you're well aware, that if you've been in education now for probably about 13 years, we've been doing Chromebooks in the classroom. So it came about back when state testing kind of flipped over to taking those assessments on a actual device. And since then, technology has changed dramatically in regards to just even how curriculum is developed and how it is delivered to some extent. And this doesn't necessarily ensure that every teacher is utilizing technology solely as delivering instruction. It's just a tool, but you'll probably notice that there's a lot of things that happen that way. So with that in mind, it is important that our students, your children, just be diligent in the care of them. It's very crucial for today's learning. We've kind of noticed, I guess, more so over the past few years and us returning to school after distance learning, the rate of damage and care, that kind of like that mindset has changed. And so we think it's important to discuss the importance of that, because it is a very critical tool. And that is a significant cost for education, not only for our district, but throughout the nation and very likely throughout the world. The budget towards ensuring that students have that, because it is such an essential tool. And so with that in mind, over the past few years, we have tried to institute some practices at our schools to ensure that students develop this mindset of being responsible and accountable for their devices. Hopefully you don't have to worry about this, but if a student is intentionally damaging equipment, according to Ed Code, the site administrators do have within their rights, they may send home some sort of a letter indicating to the parents, like, hey, this has been maliciously damaged, and you may have some sort of financial responsibility towards that. And so that's something worth keeping in mind. We've also, we just want to make sure it's, it's district property. It's important tool for their learning. And these are some of the things that are in place. Obviously, accidental damage, there's no concerns about that because things happen. But that's something that to always keep in mind. So, you may see with my next slide, we're kind of transitioning into a newer model, depending what grade your child is in. And so we're currently in the second year of a 4-year plan. Technology, as I'm sure you've either read or you just know because you've had kids in the district for numerous years, it's not going to last forever. Things are going to get damaged. If you're using it often, then just normal wear and tear is going to occur. So our plan, which was board approved and had good foresight through our director of technology, was to develop a plan where students need to be able to hang on to that device for 4/5 years. Basically, the expectation, if it can survive for 5 years, then you've done a good job. And so the way that we roll this out in our district is that we assign a Chromebook directly to a student in kindergarten. That's their first Chromebook, which is specifically assigned to them. In TK, they do have access based on the classroom's instructional model. And then that kindergartner would then have that Chromebook through kinder, first, second, third, and fourth. So that brings us up to K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that gives us our 5-year window there. And then they get reissued through 4 years, 4th grade. Then they get in 5th grade, they're going to get refreshed. So basically what happens is in 5th grade, so if you have a kiddo that was either a 5th grader this year, we would have come into their classes, taken that older device and replaced it with this current new model, which is the Acer 856. And we also decided as a district to help encourage or protect the devices from perhaps accidental damage. We also supplied them with a protective case or a cover. It does increase some of the weight for that, but it does also, we have seen that it does help a lot with that accidental damage of screens being broken. So we are currently in our 2nd year. So kinders and first would have this model. And then your 5th graders kind of got a little bit interesting because last year when we first rolled this out, we actually rolled it out initially with it flipping over with the 4th graders doing that. But we decided that it'd be best to refresh them in the 5th grade year because you can just kind of imagine as kids get older, using it more often, it's traveling more. So we wanted to have that resilience of lasting through a 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So the 4th year cycle goes on the tail end of that. So that being in mind, if you're like, hey, so I have a couple kiddos that are now in college, but when my daughter who went through our district might be, maybe a little bit accident prone, not intentional, but things happen. We also, to help support our families in this regard, we have instituted a voluntary insurance kind of plan to do that. So let's see here, Chromebook insurance. So what this is in the past, if you've been around the district, we used to work with a third-party insurance company, and then we'd have to work with engaging with them to set up this insurance thing. And last year we rolled out something where the district's kind of handling this. It does have some great benefits in that we're engaged in the entire process rather than the parent having to reach out with those individuals and coordinate with them to get things repaired. So now they're able to reach out to us, get it to us, and then we can get that turnaround much faster. But as with just about anything you can imagine with insurance, it's not something that when you're driving your car and then you get in an accident, you call up and get insurance and then suddenly you're covered. So there's a window when the insurance is available. If your student is in our district, year after year, that window does open up at the beginning of the school year. So right at the beginning of the school year, there's announcements to come out via Parent Square. And that carries through where you can voluntarily enroll if you choose to do so up until October 31st. That's that window. After October 31st, then that window closes for insurance unless you are coming kind of new to the district. Then you have the option, of course, you're new to our district, we offer that option to you. So if this is something you aren't aware of, just kind of keep your eyes open for that. And you will see an option for next year. Okay. So a little bit more about what that insurance kind of process looks like. Again, I mentioned it is closed for the current academic year. This was the cost for that protection for this year. It was $27.25, kind of an interesting number, but it's kind of the way it kind of goes out over the course of the expected life of the device. It is only for one specific year. It doesn't do it for the life of the student being in the district, so you'll want to keep that in mind as well. But just some typical costs, and if you're interested in what that might look like, there's some information, some links there. If you go to that the presentation, you can click on these links. I know there were some issues with maybe a page not found error, but I think we fixed that now. Thanks a lot, Steve. Where you can look at some of the details of this. So if you were concerned of like, oh, what if a screen broke? How much might that cost? Like that, for example, off the top of my head, I believe is around $50, give or take, depending on how that goes. And it gets to be more expensive with more modern technology because those parts tend to be just a little bit harder to replace, or like keys, and now it's like a whole keyboard replacement, things of that nature. So if this is something that's of interest to you, then you will go ahead and take a look at the details there. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us, and we can, which will have some information at the end. We can get you some more details on that. So that's in regards to the Chromebooks. And in summary, just as long as we're just taking care of things like as if it's your own, treat it well, then everything should work well. All right. So we're going to move on to our next topic here, which is state testing. And I will pass the mic over to Sergio to do that.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to remind everybody that if you were trying to get to the URL at the bottom of the slide deck previously, and we're getting an error message, that's been resolved. So that should be able to work as well as the QR code there if you need to access any of the links that we'll talk about tonight. State testing is just around the corner. The CAASPP state testing window will start in our district on April 14th. It will last until May 30th. This includes the Smarter Balance test, which is administered in grades 3rd through 8th, as well as the California Science test, which is administered in grades 5th and 8th. And there's also the California Spanish assessment. And so for any of the specific dates and schedule of your child's particular test, please refer to your Parent Square messaging or site communication that's coming from your school site for specific schedules. We will be going over a little bit in this evening, talking about practice tests and how to access the practice tests. And so the websites that we'll be looking at have some really nice tutorials that we'll take a look at, as well as guides that will help answer any questions that might be coming up from the parent perspective about the state testing. Another thing too, just to remember, is that the state testing does happen on student Chromebooks, and these are the student Chromebooks that are issued to your child from our district. And so we always want to make sure that they're up to date and they have the appropriate secure test browser, which allows for that test to be taking place. And so the classroom teachers should periodically be checking this with your students, but you're always looking for something called the secure test browser, and that's located in the lower left-hand corner of the Chromebook once the Chromebook is not signed into. And you can kind of see a screenshot of that on the area that is on the left-hand side of the slide here. So there are different things available on these websites. There's things called practice tests, training tests, and interim tests. 2 of the 3 of those are things that happen at school. The one thing that you can do with your child is look at the practice test, and the practice test does offer grade-specific, like a sample of the experience itself, which is really nice to get used to where the tools are and how to manipulate the specific pages on the test itself in the test browser. Answers for these are not recorded, they're not scored, they're not reported anything. It's just basically a practice environment, like a sandbox. And it does not require the secure browser to actually take the practice test. The practice test can be done on any browser, on any computer. It is nice, even though it doesn't require the secure browser, it is a nice practice for you and the student to go through the process of using the secure browser. It does make it a little bit more seamless for when they are taking the test, that they know exactly what to click on and go to, but that's all something that also happens during the training tests at the school sites. And then there's links there for the online practice and training test portal. So one thing that we'll take a quick look at is the Starting Smarter website. And I'm going share my screen here so that everybody can kind of get an idea of what this looks like and how to navigate it. So just a moment while we switch screens. Okay. All right, so this is the Starting Smarter website that was linked in the slide deck we were just looking at. And as you can see, you can, first of all, just notice that it is something that is translated natively on the page itself if you're not going to use a translation app in your browser. So you can translate it to Spanish that way. One thing to remember is that with the state testing, the scores for the state testing are sent digitally to the families after testing is complete. So once testing is complete and the scores have been calculated and a report has been put together, the Infinite Campus Parent Portal will be where the test results can be viewed. If you don't already have access to the parent portal, that's something that your school site should be able to help you with. There's also some information on our district site under the Parent Resources section on how to access the parent portal for Infinite Campus. Once again, that's after the test is complete to get the scores or the results of your students' performance. Because these performance reports, they come out, every year at around testing time towards the end of the school year, starting in 3rd grade, you might not be as familiar with how to read some of these. So this website gives a really nice example of how to read some of these tests results, what they cover, and there's a video that walks through it, and then how you can look at the different performance areas for language arts and for math and that sort of thing. So it's nice to see a sample of what the actual report would look like, and I'll go ahead and just click on that so you can get an idea of what the digital report will look like once your child has completed the test and gotten the scores back. It does take a few weeks for this to happen. It's not immediate, but historically they're able to be done before the end of the school year. Okay. Another really cool thing about this website is it does give you the ability to see some sample questions. So without taking a sample test, you could just see what types of questions are on here based on the different grade levels. So you can select your subject if you want to select, so for example, math for a 4th grader, and then selecting the area of the test, and then hit submit over here. You'll see that it now gives you some sample test questions. It will give you the opportunity to show the correct answer and actually walk through, this is just an example here of about 3 questions just from a 4th grade math concepts section. Once again, you can always change that to a different section or a different subject or a different grade, depending on your situation. Also on this site, and I'll just go back to the actual practice test is below that section we were looking at for the sample questions. You can take a practice test by clicking Take Practice Test. And then this is going to load a very similar environment to the student's secure browser. One of the main differences with the secure browser, though, that the students actually take the test in, is that it locks them only to the screen that we're seeing, similar to this the actual website. There's no way to make another tab or to Google an answer or something like that. It's locked into the actual page on an application. Whenever you're taking the practice test, you do need to take it as a guest. This way, it basically will just let you pass through without having to put any credentials in. Once you sign in, you select your grade level. I'll just pick 4th again. And then you have some options here. Remember, we're taking practice tests. The other types of tests, as you saw on that previous slide, are things that the kids will be doing at school prior to actually taking the test. So there is the Smartest Balance practice test, and then we can see that there's a language arts practice test here. There's a performance task, which is a longer section of that test where they're given a little bit more challenging questions that have to do with using multiple skill sets in one problem instead of just maybe one skill set for the particular problem. And then you'll see that they have both that and language arts and math. And we'll just go ahead and start into the math one. Just like the regular test, the students will have either restricted or unrestricted access to have different accessibility tools or features on there. In this case, for the practice, we're just going to continue everything that's automatically selected. And then this is kind of tricky. Sometimes it's, you look and you say, well, what's going on? I can't do anything. It wants to make sure that you can see the video and that you can hear the video, because oftentimes during the test, there'll be a sample video or audio where they read a passage to the students and they have to then respond to a passage that's read to them. So you would just click on the video. It plays a sound, which I have muted just because of our presentation today. But you'll hear a sound and then you'll say, yep, I saw the video and I heard the sound. And then you can begin the test here. And then now this is simulating just like the test would be. So any tools that the students have access to, any features, this is all going to be a basic, exact replica of what they would be seeing in the secure test browser. You know, put the scores in, you save, you next, you can pause, and that sort of thing. The controls are all up there. And that's basically the little view into the practice test. Some additional tools here. It does talk about accessibility tools if your student does have any accommodations due to any disabilities or something to the effect that the school is aware of that they can put into effect during the state test. And then some additional resources with frequently asked questions, additional parent guides and resources. This is just a really comprehensive and good site that's updated by the state. And this is the CAASPP state testing, which our district does begin in April 14th. Not necessarily your child, but our district could have testing as early as the 14th. So pay attention to your school's newsletters, parent square messaging, and you'll have a better idea of what that is to look like. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this section here. And I think, Steve, if you can advance to the next slide for me. Great. Just some practices as testing gets closer, just to go over with your student, is just to get familiar with the test items and what to expect on the test. This is very similar to what we were just looking at for the practice tests. There's no limit to how many times you can do that. You're most likely going to get different questions every time you log in and try it. So it could even be just an activity that you do with your students as enrichment or practice for the test. Also know the schedule. Like I mentioned, Parent Square or other school communication will be coming out. Make sure that your student's Chromebook is functioning correctly before testing begins. That's basically like now. If you notice that maybe one of the keys isn't working right, the screen's cracked, the battery's not holding a charge, something weird's happening, make sure the school is aware of that as soon as possible so that we can make sure there is a functioning Chromebook in the hands of your student come the day of the test. And then always, just like, you know, getting prepared for any big event, there's going to be probably some nervous jitters, and just reassuring your students that they can do their best, build that confidence, making sure you charge the device and they're prepared for the, you know, for testing. And then getting a good night's sleep, eating a healthy breakfast, getting some exercise, getting it basically their body ready for the test, you know, on the day of. It's hard to say exactly what time of day that your student will be taking that test. Oftentimes they might come in and it's the first thing in the morning. Depending on the test schedule, it could be after lunch. So just reminding them about some good practices that can help them do their best in whatever situation they'll be in for the test.
Okay, thank you, Sergio. So I was trying to answer a few questions on the side. I know that we are, so just as a reminder, some great questions that are taking place in the chat, and I appreciate that. Since this is being recorded for viewing later, we try and hold the questions till the end to make this more streamlined for those that just want to kind of see the content there. So I will definitely get to those more detailed questions at the end. But yeah, thanks, Sergio, in regards to the CAASPP testing. Which does, and I appreciate that you mentioned, Sergio, because I failed to do so in regards to making sure your Chromebooks are working well. Is yeah, now's that moment to just ask your kiddos if they're that testing age range, right? Say like, hey, let's take a quick look, make sure everything's working. If there's issues, you will definitely want to bring that up at the school, and we'll get into a little bit more details at the end, because some great conversation in regards to some concerns maybe of availability and maybe some strategies we could do to support you in that regard, and some things that we as a department do to ensure the kids have access to something to do that. So we'll loop back on that. So our last topic as we transition here into this portion, the last topic today is AI in education. We'll go through this for a bit. I do want to reserve probably at least 15 minutes at the end of this so we can discuss some get over some discussion, good questions about Chromebooks, maybe about testing, and this may even generate some questions as well, which I love to chat with people about this. So so getting into AI in education. So those of you that are kind of aware, or just a techie person like myself and my colleagues here, this really kind of came to the forefront. Let's see, a little over like November 2022, 3 years and 3 months ago, when ChatGPT kind of launched at the end of November in 2022. So that just made it just very aware to us. And it was around that time, I think it was within not even a month later, one of our previous board members had brought it to attention, hey, this is something we really need to focus on. So we're really excited that I had that level of vision to see that this is going to the potential for impacting education. So at that moment, we actually developed a kind of a 3-year plan. This plan kind of is in motion. It's constantly evolving because the tech just moves fast. When this was designed in literally 2023, I think it was around February, we sat down and started talking about this. I was like, how can we plan and how can we prepare Oak Grove, our community, our teachers and students, and just everybody in regards to how this may impact education? And so we came up with the idea in our first year was we're just going to try and just educate, right? We were learning ourselves. We spent a lot of time, the three of us, specifically Sergio, Steve, and I, went to a lot of conferences. We got on a lot of webinars and did a lot of research in regards to AI and just trying to figure out for ourselves, what is this thing? We were trying to figure it out, right? And if you were around last year, this was actually a topic that was on the same presentation. And we went into a little bit of the history of AI at that time and how it might impact education. We even called out a few applications that are have been used even prior to November in education. For example, I'm sure many of you are familiar with iReady. That's been around since my daughter was in the district, and she's a junior in college now. And that's something that we use, but gives us information in regards to kind of like that readiness for the state test, kind of ties into that. Gives us some benchmark testing so we can kind of see where kids are at. That specific program in and of itself is designed to use some computer learning. It's going to have some adaptive technology in there that when a student is taking, very similar to state tests, when a student's answering questions, based on how they're answering questions, it's going to kind of position them at different levels of the test and automatically grade things. Believe it or not, that's computers in the background, that's AI, some earlier adoption of how that stuff works that does that. So this year, 24-25, during the 3-year plan, our vision this year was that we would start introducing staff to AI in the classroom. The idea was, hey, we're going to try and get a tool that we have vetted and get it actually put in front of a teacher so that they could perhaps engage with AI at the student level. So we actually spent some time, did a lot of research, and found a particular company that we decided to partner with to do a pilot program with actually utilizing it because it was a primary thing that we want to discuss, and it'll be my theme over the next few minutes here, is that the key thing that we as a district, even prior to this whole concept of AI, is privacy and safety is paramount. That's kind of our number one. And so for us, anytime, just even kind of taking a sidestep here, anytime we engage as Oak Grove School District with any product that's going to be put in front of students, we ensure that that vendor, that company, is going to be abiding by any laws, federal or state, in regards to their privacy. They're minors. We're a K-8 district, so we need to do that. And so we ensure that they sign what's called a National Data Privacy Agreement, which ensures that they abide by all these laws. So when we found this particular company, we did that with them. They signed, so we felt that things were going to be a safe way to go. And we trained staff on this. It was a Davis Intermediate, Stipe Elementary, and Herman Intermediate. Interestingly enough, we have found now, as we're approaching this year, we're still kind of not ready. We're finding that we're still trying to figure it out in the classroom setting as teachers, how to utilize this tool. So we're pivoting a little bit with that. It is being used because it's safe, and we're okay with that. But that's kind of where we're at the moment. We are also currently in this current year, we're looking at developing board policy and figuring out how are we as a district going to visualize this with our district, because that's kind of like, as you begin to look at research specifically in education, it's not so much like, hey, what's a good tool, but it's sort of like, what's the best practices? And so that's going to be our goal now. We've actually formulated, I'm kind of losing track. I think it might be the next slide. I'm going to get ahead here real quick and see if I'm pacing myself out right. I might be needing to change the slide, sorry. Let's see, so we've got our testing. Anyway, so yeah, so we are looking at how we need to develop policies. So we've actually formulated a group, our AI task force, and we've already had 2 meetings, and we are currently meeting to discuss these types of things. It's formed, that's comprised of community members. There's a chance that one of you might be on there. There's a number of people in this meeting, parents, guardians, teachers, staff, that sit down and we have discussions around what this might look like. And we're going to take those conversations and some of the exercises we're going through to perhaps make recommendations. That's our goal. That will occur more so next year, because we still have 1 more meeting this year and 2 more next year before we actually propose what that policy may look like for students. So that's where we're at currently at the moment. I'm going to take a peek at what my next slide is and see if I'm on pace with what I need to do here. Sorry. Okay, that's our plan. So yeah, introducing staff, that's where we're at. Privacy compliance, it's very important. So yeah, that's the task force, creating those guidelines. That I think has been some really good work. We had some very good conversations around it. I've been reading a lot about this topic, and we're kind of coming up with some ideas as a group around this. But I guess maybe during this, I may spend a few minutes just talking as well about my kind of opinions and what I've learned about some research in regards to that. And as we transition near the end of this presentation with you guys may have some opportunities to share. You can come off mic and things of that nature. And I think maybe just to engage, because I kind of like engaging with audience. I don't like doing meets as much, trying to see where people are at. We may, if it's okay, I think Steve can maybe enable the reactions at the bottom of this, because as I kind of go through my presentation, if you feel so inclined, you can react with either thumbs up or concerns or something of that nature in regards to some things we may discuss around AI. So let's see here. Let me jump forward to my next slide. So AI, so uses for AI in education. So if you're kind of here trying to figure out how does this look? We kind of, I guess, in our culture, we see AI on the daily, some kind of like simple examples of what we see just in society outside of education is if you have something like Siri or, Google, I won't say the keywords because my phone will probably go off. That's been around for many years. So we have been engaging to some extent with that. Whenever you go to a website and have the little chat box in the corner, that's all AI. Those are all things that are set up, these little bots that are going to allow somebody to engage with it to maybe streamline information or questions. Many websites have these nowadays. It's been around for a long time. Self-driving cars. That's a very clear example of how AI works. That would not be possible without the work that's been done around the idea of AI and how things can do this. Just facial recognition, it's all over the place. But when we get into specifically how that works in the educational environment, there's a lot of big considerations that we need to take into play. But some benefits that we've been discussing and some risks, but start with benefits of how AI can impact a student or a teacher in the classroom. One of the things that you may see or may have read about or heard about is a personalized instruction. So I kind of like to use the analogy of, you can think back during being a child and having a teacher. Who was the best teacher? Well, the teacher kind of knew something about you, that could engage with you, that had some idea of like who you were as a person, and that you could ask a question to and that they don't just give you an answer. So for many of us, we go like, well, that's what AI does. I see my kid do it. They type in a question, just gives them the answer. That, I believe, is going to be the difference on how it will be appropriately used in the educational setting. Is it's going to be the teacher that when I was teaching 4th grade and a student would come over and they raise their hand and go, Mr. Neff, I'm stuck on this math problem. And I wouldn't ever go over to Sienna, as an example, my daughter, and say, yeah, Sienna, it's 24, and walk away. That's horrible teaching. We don't do that. But you would sit down and maybe assist them. Oh, okay, you've got 2 digits here. You got 8 times 3. Let's start talking about what that might mean and looking at strategies on how to arrive at the answer and giving hints. So a lot of the AI that we see in education is what we call like tutors, which kind of just nudge them along and give them a little help. So that's changed even dramatically over this year that we've done the pilot. It's in a lot of places. So personalized instruction, that kind of where that comes through. AI can learn about who that end user is. The more you engage with AI and give it information, perhaps you might say like, oh yeah, I enjoy playing hockey and I need to write a personal narrative, and maybe the AI say, well, tell me a little about some things you like. Well, I like playing hockey, or I enjoy going, to the lake with my parents, or going to the park. Then AI is that technology that is a place these days where it can actually remember that. And so that when it does a math problem, it says, I really need help with practicing my multiplication timetables. Can you write me some word problems? AI is smart enough today where it will personalize those word problems, knowing that you like to go to the lake, or you like to walk your dog, or you like playing hockey, and it'll generate that level of engagement because it has the ability to personalize it. So those are things that we're seeing in education. Improved data analysis. We as a district, I had mentioned already before, we have benchmarking with scores and things of that nature. How does it inform teachers' instruction? It helps us as teachers to be more efficient with some like looking at tests and looking at all these different data points, whether it's a state test, which is coming up, benchmark testing, a quiz that you gave. There's ways that AI can take that data, bring it together, and help find ways that that teacher can support maybe some gaps in children's learning. So those are things that are out there. It's very simple for simple repetitive tasks with teachers. Like, hey, if you got to grade a multiple choice test, yeah, you'd want that to do it, because I'd rather the teacher have that computer give that and then spend time with Sienna in person, because that's where the strength lies, that human interaction. The hope is that we as teachers can have more time for that human engagement with them. And the availability 24/7, right? I tell you, I may be up late grading papers, but I'm probably not going to be helping out my student at midnight, right? But that student maybe is trying to finish that report, and the availability could be there. So it's interesting, accessibility options, I can go on, but these are just some uses of ways it can go. But I just kind of want to close this idea out, because Steve's going to be sharing some basic, do's and don'ts, or some just good tips about how we would be looking at AI if you're engaging with that with your children at home, perhaps. And I just want to reiterate that, in my personal opinion, and a lot of the work that we're seeing with our stakeholder group, is I think the biggest thing that we need to address is that ethical use of AI and the equitable use of AI, because the tools change all the time. There are thousands of tools and they're changing overnight. But if we can approach it from encouraging our children, our students, to see it through that lens of equity and being safe and using it for the right reasons, not to cheat. It's not just a simple way to get answers. It's going to help guide you. I think that's kind of, in my opinion, our mission. So I'm going to kind of wrap up with that, and I'll pass it off to Steve, and then we'll definitely make sure that we save some time, because I'd love to hear some opinions from a few of you if you're willing to share. So pass it on to Steve now. Thanks.
Yeah, so Bruce kind of shared a little bit about how we're approaching it in our district and everything, but we also know that there are tools out there that you can use at home that your kids might even have access to right now. And so some of the things I wanted to mention in this segment is to look at the risks, right? What are some dangers that exist with AI, especially in the private use? We've tried to address as Bruce mentioned, we try to mitigate some of those risks inside the district. Obviously, if they're on a personal device or if they're at home, we can't really help with that. So here's some practices that if you or your children are using generative AI products at home, that these are things that you should do to avoid the risks that can exist with generative AI. So some of the don'ts is, first, don't give personal information into generative AI. Like, don't have them put in names or address or classroom or school or age or things like that. A lot of the products that are open to the public that are free, right? They use your data as their monetary source. So that's something to avoid, giving them data that would possibly go back into their product and might come out in unexpected ways later. So yeah, keeping personal information out of those systems is going to be best. And that goes for most things, right? Teaching digital literacy to your children, you know, don't give personal information is often a very good rule to follow. Second, don't blankly trust the output. We have all probably heard about hallucinations and how it doesn't always give accurate information, that type of thing. A lot of the generative AI products that are out there right now were built as making language, right? As writing tools, that type of thing. And they weren't necessarily originally designed as truth fact-finding tools. So if it doesn't know the answer, there has been lots of documented cases of the output being made up because it's just putting one word after another type thing, not always double checking itself. I know that a lot of them have started to try and fix some of those issues, but still, you know, if you ever use it or your children use it, don't just blankly trust that output. Like, check it, verify it. And then lastly, don't have the students use it to just do the assignments for them. That's not what the purpose of these tools are. And so, you know, just make sure that you reiterate that. And Bruce mentioned the ethical use of AI, and that's part of that, right? Is not cheating, not having something, or, you know, just like I wouldn't go and have my next door neighbor write my paper for me or anything. I'm not going to have this product write my paper for me. There are some things that you can do, though. So these are the do's. And first, do use prompts that are clear and detailed. Oftentimes, when I've worked with teachers or students that struggle with using AI, then usually it comes down to the prompt. They usually put in something that is pretty generic and very short and brief, and they're wondering why they don't get a good output from that. And in computer programming, we often talk about a term called, garbage in, garbage out. And so if your prompt is not very good when you're putting it in, then the output's not going to be very good coming out. So, making sure that the prompts are very clear and detailed. Something I heard recently was that a lot of AI prefers bullet points rather than a long narrative. And that kind of, helps it to grab onto what it is that you're looking for. So that's something that you can try as well if you and your students are attempting these products. Another do is use AI to handle mundane tasks, right? And that's kind of what Bruce was referring to, is what we're looking at when we're looking at products to use in the schools, is what are some things that AI can handle that, is kind of the tedious aspect of teaching that AI can take care of, and then the teacher can focus on meeting with the kid. And so likewise in your day-to-day life, if you're looking to use AI in your homes, then think about how you can get AI to handle some of those mundane tasks. I know that sometimes in my house we have done things like, hey, we've got these 5 ingredients in our fridge and I don't know what to make. So I'll just go on there and type in, hey, I've got these 5 ingredients. What recipes can you give me? right? And AI gives something back. And it's kind of, you know, interesting and fun, and sometimes it's adventuresome. But, you know, that's kind of something where, yeah, that seems like a pretty good thing to use AI for. Do you practice digital citizenship? One thing that I found fascinating, it was just a few weeks ago, is that AI responds more positively to courtesy than it does to rudeness, which was just kind of fascinating to me. Like there's some research entity that was checking out some of these AI products, and they said, like, if you're rude to AI, it tends to give more hallucinations and bad information than if you're courteous to it, which, you know, is just interesting. Obviously, it has to do with how it's programmed, but you know, digital citizenship is part of that, right? Like making sure that the students are interacting with digital with AI in ways that are you know, good, and you know, practice those skills of making sure that they are using it ethically and equitably, that type of thing. Not putting in the personal information or other people's personal information, not using images that other people haven't given them permission to use, that type of thing. And then lastly, if you do use AI, make sure that you read the terms of service and their end user agreements. I know that oftentimes we, you know, are hit with that wall of text when we're first installing something. We just say accept, agree, right? This is pretty new, so just note that, you know, you might want to read through that, especially if your students are using it, so that you understand how they're using that information that you're putting in there. And yeah, that can be a useful do as well. Okay, at this point, I believe that we're going to stop the recording, right? And then we'll allow you guys to turn on your mics, and if you have questions that you want to ask, then you can do so, and then we'll try to answer them the best that we can.